Thank you, Minister. Senator Whish-Wilson.
Thank you, President. My question is to Senator Cormann, representing the Treasurer. The IMF has recently called for Australia to increase borrowings to boost public investment in infrastructure, as it would support aggregate demand, take pressure off monetary policy, ensure against downside growth risks. It would employ resources released by the mining sector, catalyse private investment, boost productivity, ease housing supply bottlenecks, and would take advantage of record low interest rates. Yet the budget says that payments to states for infrastructure will fall from $9 billion next year to a new low of $4 billion in 2019. Will the Liberal government take up the advice of the IMF and borrow to invest in infrastructure, or is the government going to stick to its spin that debt is a dirty word and simply sit on its hands?
The Minister for Finance, representing the Treasurer, Senator Cormann.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and I thank Senator Whish-Wilson for that question. And I would refer him to the answer I gave to Senator Bushby yesterday, and that is that despite additional global economic headwinds in recent times, despite the additional external challenges that Australia has faced, the Australian economy is performing very well by international standards. We are growing more strongly than when we came into government. 3.1% growth in the most recent reported annual period, which is higher than the 2% when we came into government. It's higher than any of the G7 economies in the world is achieving, higher than the United States, higher than Canada, higher than the United Kingdom, and indeed, it is higher than the OECD average. Now, this government, though, doesn't sit on its laurels. I mean, we have in this term of Parliament, we will build on the progress that we've made in the last Parliament, and that, of course, includes a significant investment in productivity-enhancing infrastructure. I do agree with the honourable senator that incurring debt in order to invest in productivity-enhancing, economy-growing infrastructure is a better debt than what we were forced to do by the Labor Green government when we came into government, and that is to continue to borrow in order to pay for our recurrent expenditure. When you continue to spend more on your day-to-day living expenses than you earn, over time you're going to get yourself into a deeper and deeper problem. And to continue to accumulate more and more debt, to continue to borrow from our children and grandchildren, to pay for our day-to-day living expenses today is irresponsible. It puts at risk the sustainability of these benefits and services provided by government, and it also means that we're forcing future generations, our children and grandchildren, to either accept higher taxes or deeper spending cuts to pay for our lifestyle today. And that is not something that we believe is fair, and that is not something that we will be a part of, and that is why we continue to focus on budget repair as an important priority.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Whish-Wilson.
Thank Senator Cormann for his answer. I think there's a reason some of the most respected economic commentators in this country are calling for some action. In his outgoing speech, Reserve Bank Governor Glenn Stevens said, "We are living in a world in which the ability of monetary policy alone to boost growth sustainability is very likely to be a good deal more limited than we might wish." He then made the case for government to borrow for the right infrastructure assets. Can Senator Cormann please outline to the chamber what your plans are to borrow at record low interest rates and invest in more productive infrastructure in this country?
Senator Cormann.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. Now, what I would say to the good senator is that just because interest rates are comparatively low today doesn't mean that that is going to be the case forever. And the debt growth trajectory that we have inherited from the Labor Green government is unsustainable. It does actually expose Australia to unacceptable levels of risk, which is why we are focused on bringing the debt growth trajectory down to stabilise that and over time to reduce it as a share of the economy and over time in dollar terms as well. That is something that we need to do. Australia has got terms of trade which are more than twice as volatile than those of the OECD average. I mean, we're very much a trading nation. We are an exporting country. If you look at what, for example, has happened to the price of iron ore in recent years, representing more than 20% of our—
Order, Minister. Senator Whish-Wilson.
I have waited a while, President, for the answer. About point of order on relevance, I did ask what the government's plans were to invest in productive, transformative infrastructure in this country.
You did ask the minister about borrowing whilst the interest rates are low, and the minister did answer that up front by saying interest rates mightn't necessarily be low forever. And I think implicit in the minister's answer was the fact that there's caution against borrowing. So I believe the minister's been directly relevant. Minister.
And of course, as part of our national economic plan for jobs and growth, we are rolling out a $50 billion infrastructure investment program over the period 13-14 to 2019.
Thank you, Minister. The time for answering the questions expired. Senator Whish-Wilson, a final supplementary question.
Yeah, thank you, President. Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull has said that the massive moral obligation of this generation is to reduce debt. Does Senator Cormann agree that also a massive moral obligation is avoiding underinvesting in this nation's future, and that the infrastructure gap, as identified by a Senate Select Committee, is nearly $1 trillion around Australia?
Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We need to reduce the deficit and reduce the level of debt growth in relation to recurrent expenditure. And I mean, this government is doing two things at the same time. We are improving the quality of government spending by actually shifting a significant proportion into capital investment, infrastructure investment in productivity-enhancing infrastructure that generates a stronger growth into the future, and as such also generates stronger revenue flows for government. But we need to continue to bring unaffordable spending growth down so that we don't continue to increase the level of debt that is essentially accumulated on the back of day-to-day living expenses. Now, I mean, this is no family would put their grocery bill onto their credit card year in, year out, and then hand the credit card over at the end of their life and say to their kids, "No, you deal with it. You deal with it." No family would do it, and the Australian government shouldn't either.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Brown.